Hi, Amelia.
How are
Hello.
you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Oh, yay. I've got my women here.
Hey, excellent.
Hi,
All the
everyone.
women are here. Heart Center Tech. Welcome to the Heart Center Tech Summit. This is the Heart Center Tech Women's Group. All of these are amazing Heart Center Tech women leaders. Amanda Coolong, she's the co-founder of Tech Zulu and now running the main chapter for Heart Center Tech. She's going to introduce you to all these wonderful women and what they're going to be talking about today. Amanda, take it away.
Yay. Thank you so much, Jude. And thank you for doing this. I think heart-centered tech is, and heart-centered everything is where we need to be right now. I would like to start off by just giving a quick overview. You know, we've been having some really great conversations leading up to this about how we can be more purposeful in the way that we lead, especially in the times of crisis that we are in, uncertainty, radical change. I think in the last 6 months, we've learned that we all have a deep need for connection. And it's time that we start acknowledging and integrating the emotional needs of our workforce. Because I think we can also say that we can't just think our way out of this, right? It requires both the head and the heart. So with that being said, I would like to do a brief introduction with my panelists. Let's start with Nadya Ichinomiya. She's Enterprise Agile Coach at Sony Pictures and Chairwoman of Women in Tech Hollywood. So Nadya, I'm actually going to start this off with you to say, how are you doing today? How are you feeling?
I'm doing really well today. First of all, it's Friday, so we made it through the week, and I was just watching my son running through the shot, and it just kind of reminded me that, you know, I think that in this time of crisis, we actually have this opportunity to open up our hearts, because, you know, they say home is where the heart is, right? So it just kind of reminds me that by opening up our homes during this crisis, we are opening up our hearts, because you see husbands, wives, partners, pets, and children running through the shot. So yes, doing great today, and very happy to be here with all these wonderful leaders.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. Next up, I'd like to introduce Deborah Crowe. She's executive coach and host of Imperfect, the Heart-Centered Leadership podcast. Oh my goodness, Deb, you've had some amazing guests already, but how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling great. Greetings from Canada, everybody, and just humbled to be amongst such a wonderful panel of phenomenal women, and really love that Jude has created such initiative. And I think we've stepped into our greatness this year with being more heart-centered. And like Nadya just said, we're at home and we're just trying to figure this all out. So I'm really excited to have an amazing conversation with all of you ladies.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that, Deb. Barbara Bickham, next up. I've known Barbara for a number of years now. She's co-founder of the Women's Innovation Fund Accelerator. How are you feeling today?
I'm good. Did my exercise, so I did all that. Getting back into kind of a routine.
Routine? What's that?
I know, huh? But I've been very virtualized prior to this. So the transition from kind of offline to online was very simple for me. And then less flying around, which is okay, because now you do more in person. And so, you know, we were quite used to opening our home up virtually to people, because that's how we kind of operated prior to. Yeah. But, you know, so it was a small adjustment for us. We're already kind of virtualized.
Yeah, good. Well, sometimes that can be helpful, right?
Hey, helps.
And then last up, we have Sharon Plunkett, director of St. Joseph Center's Code Talk, which is a free boot camp, a coding boot camp for low-income women. How are you feeling today, Sharon?
Hi, good morning, everybody. I don't think it's morning where everybody is, but I'm feeling really good about being in this conversation with all of you today. And I'm feeling very, it's just the open-heartedness that has been, I felt, very pervasive, but that has also allowed us to approach work more maybe authentically. I'm feeling a lot of that this morning, a little bit of nerves. Yeah. But I think this is a really valuable conversation, and I'm very grateful that I'm able to be here and be with you all. And I'm also very inspired by all of you. And the work that you're doing and the perspectives and, you know, the way that you're approaching the problems that we want to solve. So Very honored. So thank you.
Thank you. Likewise. So let's jump into it. I think what I wanted to do with that, I think it's obvious to us, but not everybody watching, is Nadya spoke specifically in our conversations leading up to this about how she uses an agile approach, obviously with what she does at Sony. And Nadya, you added a fourth question in your process, which is, how are you really doing today? Why did you do that?
That's a great question. And so for people that aren't familiar with one of the ceremonies in Agile is called the retrospective. And it's, you know, what worked, generally it's what worked, you know, excuse me, I apologize. I'm talking about the daily stand-ups. I was talking about retrospectives earlier to someone today. So the daily stand-ups in Agile are, you know, what did you work on yesterday? What are you going to work on today? And any obstacles you might be having. And so what we noticed early in March and April with one of the big teams or teams of teams that we were working with at Sony Pictures was that, you know, as the pandemic started to kind of wear on people, and people's, you know, people's partners were losing their jobs. Some people had elderly parents that they were taking care of or grandparents that they were taking care of, and that was putting additional strain on them. People were running homeschooling that weren't previous teachers, and, you know, dealing with the anxiety of possibly getting sick or having a loved one getting sick. So there was, you know, and I'll just the aspect of never off, you know, never time off, right? Because you're always working, always kind of available. That was wearing on people, but no one wanted to actually say anything about it because everyone thought that their personal experience of dealing with this level of stress was personal, and so they didn't want to express how they were really feeling. But it was, you know, bottled inside, but it was causing, you know, this, there was an opportunity for, you know, what we call in Agile psychological safety, where you're actually able to express how you really feel, and without, if you feel comfortable with that. So we noticed that we have a ceremony where we can express how you're really feeling, and that happened, you know, in a retrospective and a, you know, in the context of psychological safety. And a few people kind of piped up. Actually, one woman piped up. And it really broke the floodgates loose. It turned out one person was in a motorcycle accident, and she didn't, you know, she was hit by a motorcycle, didn't even tell us, you know, anything like that. So,
Wow.
yeah, people were dealing with elderly grandparents that were very ill, and you know, working, you know, tons of hours. And so at that moment of actually, you know, that vulnerability moment broke the floodgates loose and let other people share what their experiences were. So we decided to kind of codify that and say, you know, what are you working on? What did you work on yesterday? What are you going to work on today? What obstacles are you feeling? And how are you really feeling today? And then having that go from person to person in the group. And it allowed people to feel more connected with each other, even though vulnerability in some places can be looked as a weakness. It's actually much more of a strength. And so it allowed people to really share and bring their whole selves to work, so to speak. And it brought more warmth and connectedness by that moment. So it's been codified in a lot of the teams at Sony Pictures.
It's wonderful that you actually, you know, went that far with it, put pen to paper, so to speak. That's fantastic. Sharon, that made me think about what you and I spoke of too, leading up to the panel, around this idea of, you know, all the uncertainty, all the anxiety, there's less space for creativity, and the kind of thinking that we need to make good products. So how, as leaders, can we support our staff in your perspective? You know, you spoke a lot about, you know, what do you have at your disposal to grapple with the uncertainties and still show up with an open heart?
Yeah, I think demolishing the pretense is the start of it. Really being straight. I mean, having straight conversations takes a sort of a level of moral courage. And I think as leaders, we have to show up a certain kind of way that makes it safe for people to be straight with us about what they're really dealing with. I remember I was in my kitchen early on, and I've been both working in the field and working in my office, but or at home. And I remember getting up to go into the kitchen. The fridge is there, you know, it's right there. And feeling almost a kind of an anxiety, like a separation anxiety from my computer, the other side of the room.
Yeah, good point.
And I was like, I mean, this can't be just me. And I think it's people have attempted to you know, to get through it, be stronger. But the idea that, you know, when you're in crisis mode, I think we get into these reserves that we don't otherwise have in crisis mode. But this has been the longest crisis, I think, in my lifetime, for sure. And so our emotional response to that prolonged stress is different. And to your point, I mean, I do think that if we're not really having the capacity to be open, there's no space for creativity. And there's no space for the kind of thinking that allows for good work to happen. We're all just kind of like boxed up, really, not feeling very good. And imagine it's the same thing for our staff too, and for the people that we work with.
So there's the word that people tend to overuse in a lot of ways, but that's very relevant here is just authenticity. Being completely authentic. Barbara, what about you? You know, you're running this accelerator where, you know, accelerators can be challenging in their own way, and there's a lot of pressure that can be put on people, and then you add all these crises on top of it. How do you bring your whole self to the table in running your accelerator?
Well, we kind of had, the accelerator's gone through some iterations. So we had online, then we had kind of done virtualized, semi-virtualized. So we had used Zoom in the beginning, and then we did that for about a year, and now it's completely 100% virtualized. It's in like kind of a learning management system. So we had kind of prepared, not for this, but to kind of migrate all of our content completely online so that we could do more kind of one-on-one coaching, for lack of a better word, versus kind of doing it constantly, like having that traditional cohort. So the thing that I see is, how do you bring, and I've done this for many years. I mean, I've set up a lot of remote working environments, and I've been in a lot of remote work environments for a very long time. And the two things I always say is kind of, people are whole entire people. Even at work, when you look at someone, even in a physical office, they could be going through something and you're wondering, like, why is their performance down? Well, they could be going through something. And so as a leader, you have to kind of be mindful of your people, like, what's going on, what's happening now, and you have to be open with them. I 100% agree with that. The other thing I say now is, you got to take the offline and bring it online. So how do you create these communities so that people can interact with each other as if they're at work, being mindful that they are whole entire people? Like we said, kids are going to run in the back, and that's cool. Your husband might show up, your dog might jump on top of you. Like, you have to be mindful of that.
It's all about the cat.
The cat might jump on you as well, and the bird, you know. I mean, so like, you have to be mindful of that as kind of a leader, and as someone that's fostering this transition over. Because I see us as like fostering this transition over. And if you're open to migrating all those things and using your emotional intelligence and your heart-centeredness to not only be authentic, but have the integrity, have the openness, go, hey, I'm available, even if you know, like, let's say they don't want to admit, like Nadya said in the stand-up, like, hey, I'm open and available to you as the leader. If you don't want to have that conversation in front of everyone, you can have it with me separate and apart. And I think being mindful of that is very important.
So what I'm hearing you say in that last statement is that if the leader goes first and shows vulnerability, right? I'm afraid, I made a mistake, I'm not necessarily good at this, I don't have all the answers. That probably tends to unleash more vulnerability for everybody else, right?
Correct, because if you are afraid to show your so when this first happened, I was in the middle of a cohort. So the cohort was like on week 7 of 8. Like, literally, we were at the end.
Oh, wow.
And so so I had a meeting and I said, okay, look, how are you guys all really feeling? Like, and I said, this is how I'm feeling. I'm here for you guys. You know, so you had to, as the leader, you have to step up and do it first, because otherwise your people are looking at you going, you know, they're all in kind of shell shock. Everyone was shell shocked. And then I like how you guys are saying, like, there's this fatigue factor as well. So how do you handle this fatigue factor? Because, you know, it's kind of gone on, and in some places or certain ways, and it's kind of gone on and on. So mentally, how do you handle that as the leader as well?
Yeah, yeah.
Very important.
Excellent points. So I want to jump over to Deb, because Deb, you and I talked a lot about that part of feeling, you know, just the heart of feeling. And it's not just about what you're doing, it's about what you're feeling. And also for looking at the fact that we need leaders, not managers. Do you want to kind of expound on that a little bit more?
Absolutely. I think COVID-19, if I can put it in context, has brought out a lot of good, in that everything that all of you ladies have said, just to segue and add on to it a bit, we've learned to be open and vulnerable in our own homes as it relates to work. Like Barbara said and Nadya said, whatever happens within our home environment, it's personal for us. And leaders, it's not like they had a pandemic file sitting in a filing cabinet. None of us were alive during the last pandemic. So it was that continual conversation over March and April that I was having with executive leadership teams and C-suite leaders. And I said, but who said that you can't say, I don't know. I don't have the information at hand. As I get the information, I will tell you, but as of right now, I don't know. It doesn't lessen their stature, their role, their responsibility. If anything, the openness and vulnerability that they've role modeled from their home, just like their staff, I think it has brought a lot of relationships closer. I think that authenticity and transparency has really, really shone through. I know with the clients that I've been working with, productivity is up and morale is up, because managers are no longer needed, leaders are needed, and they're fostering this heart-centered approach. And it's just opening up an opportunity for quality conversation. And like Nadya said, instead of saying, how are you doing? How about we check in and say, how are you feeling? Instead of, because if anyone says to us, how are you doing? What do we say? I'm fine. We're not fine. And then what if we add two more questions after we say, how are you feeling? With that, you know, ability to intrinsically validate that person and really listen. What's distracting you today? And how can I support you? So acknowledging, because sometimes we can see on people's faces, they don't even have to verbalize how they're feeling. We can pick up on that energy, even though we're on a Zoom call, and we can still maintain effective communication and looking at each other, you know, eye to eye, and really see what's going on. So I kind of love it that Brene Brown has been on this path for many years, and now we're all really not living it, but we're feeling it, we're acting on it, we're practicing, because our work has become our home, and our home is now our work. So it's like this one environment, but we are expected to be two different people, even though our lives have been impacted with COVID. So I'm loving where this has moved. I think there's still a lot of work to be done, but I think if we keep the way we think about things heart-centered and always go with that approach, I know that if we put love first, we can't go wrong.
Yeah. Ah, so true. So true. That leads me into a personal story, I believe, that Sharon shared when we were all chatting, talking about the fact that you're an immigrant and you've had to get used to sustaining connection through electronic means for a very long time, to the tune of about 6,000 miles or so, right? Can you share the story about Christmas Day with everybody?
Yeah, I value technology for very, very many reasons. I've been a technologist since I was like 6, when I took apart the VCR and, you know, tried to figure out how things work. But I really do value it as the tool or the medium. When I left home when I was 17 and I moved to America when I was 23. I'm not going to say how old I am now, but it's a while ago. It's a few minutes ago.
45.
And since I left, technology like Skype and, virtual conferencing and stuff has advanced to the degree that it starts out being maybe a little bit awkward or artificial, but like the way that we have used it over the years has evolved to where it's the same, and now it's the same thing for us as like picking up the telephone and really kind of listening to the person on the other end. So when Christmas Day comes around, the time difference is a bit of a bear, but we Skype, and my family just have the laptop on the dinner table, and I'm there for dinner. And you know what, the funny thing that happens is after a few beats, after a little while, I'm just there. It's not the computer. It's not, the distance disappears. I'm just there engaged with, the banter and the back and forth and whatever is happening. I may not be able to smell it or touch anyone, but emotionally, the connection is as real as though I were there. Yeah. And I think that's really important right now because, how do we really reach our teams and the people that we work with and the people that we collaborate with? How do we create a connection in the absence of that physical stuff that we all rely on, especially females? We're very sensing people. And so we've had to figure, I know from experience that the emotional connection and the real emotional engagement does not have to go away because we're not physically there. There's just a little bit of a mental adjustment to allow it to happen. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've even gotten in an argument, by the way, over who got served for. I mean, there's been a real live argument.
You're like,
yeah, no, it's very real.
In front of me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that would just be torture, though, putting the stuffing in front of me. Oh, please. But I think what I'm hearing you say too there, Sharon, is it's person first. It's people first. It's not technology first. It's the person, and it's the context, and it's the worldviews, and it's all of those things that they bring to the table that make connection so much more real. It's much more the person over the tech or the channel or the device, form factor, you name it, right?
I think of it, my dad has a hearing aid. He's in his late 70s. I think of it in terms of the hearing aid he's not thinking to himself, I'm hearing this conversation through a hearing aid. It's just happens to be the medium that we're using right now. And I think we can show people how to engage by being vulnerable and by being authentic, and really engage authentically and not just, yeah, how are you doing today? Fine, yeah, but really getting into it with people.
I'm sorry, I have to throw this in here because it's just so outlandish but funny. I know that we're probably all also, binging certain shows that we like late at night. I'm a night owl, so I binge stuff on Netflix. And I keep thinking about this episode of Lucifer, where he's attempting to be two different versions of himself with two different women, and it just fails miserably because he's literally, dividing himself, not literally, but he's dividing himself, and it just doesn't work because it's not who he is. It's not his whole self. So I just had to throw that out there because I know we're all binge watching stuff too. I would like to switch back for a moment to Nadya. I want to switch gears here and talk about some of the things we need to overcome in order to bring our whole selves to the table, like we keep talking about with connection and authenticity. How do we effectively help people get over this idea of failure and the fear of failure? And how do we help people to, in industry speak, we say fail forward?
That's a great question. And, in my role as an Agile coach, we talk about failing forward and actually, we talk a little bit, instead of bouncing back from adversity, we kind of joke around and saying bounce forward from adversity. One of the things that there's this servant leadership program that we recently started at work. And one of the things in the course is you know, I start the course, and I noticed that some people have their cameras on and some of them don't, right? So I say, and it's, you know, it's self-selected, so people aren't forced to be in the class. But I'll say, you know, if you can possibly have your camera on, if you have the bandwidth, please do it. And I say, you know, imagine two leaders. One has their camera on all the time. One never has their camera on. Who do you feel more safe with? Who do you feel is more competent? Who do you feel is more, who do you trust more, right? So that gets people to turn on their cameras, right? And then the other thing is I also say, you know, dance like no one's watching, because they really aren't. They're checking their phones, right? and the whole thing is, and then I say, you know, if you're handed a group photo, who do you spend most of the time? And then you're in that photo. Who do you spend most of the time looking at? You look at yourself, and everyone is looking at themselves. So therefore, no one is looking at you. And that becomes, people are like, oh my gosh, yes. No one is actually looking at me, because they're all looking at themselves. And it becomes this really kind of like moment in the course where people feel like, okay, they can express themselves. And so the thing about, I also will say, this recently happened with my son. You know, I gave him a pandemic haircut, and it wasn't too perfect, but I said, have you ever noticed a really bad haircut on someone? He goes, yeah. I said, how many seconds do you think to yourself, oh, that person has a really bad haircut? And he thought about it. He's like, not very much. I'm like, so yes, you know, get over it. So in terms of the failing thing, I think what we try to coach people is that people connect a failure to, I am a failure. Right. And that's not the right connection to make. That's as absurd as to say, I have an elbow, therefore I am an elbow. and then when people got to get that, and then I go through, you know, how many, you know, we've always heard the Edison story, you know, like how many times it took for him to invent a light bulb. I also like the one that Jeff Bezos recently, when the Kindle Fire, you know, didn't do so well, right? He said, "Oh, we're working on a lot bigger failures now." And that kind of like audacity around failure, it takes a maturity, right, to actually go, you know what? Not everything I try is going to be great, but if it's a numbers game and I just try a lot, I'll probably get there, you know, sooner or later. And so I think the aspect of that it's a numbers game, and then I always just go to like when you're learning to walk as a toddler. Mm-hmm. The first days, you know, how many times are you falling down the first days? But no one says, oh, you know what? I'm not destined to be a walker, right? So get to go, okay, you know, just because you fail doesn't mean that you're a failure. And, you know, and then it goes back to the Winston Churchill, you know, success is going from failure to failure with no loss of enthusiasm. So that's the coaching we do, and just try to keep the experiments like above the water line, so to speak. If you're in a boat, and you want to have the holes in the boat above the water line versus below the water line. And so we get people to feel more comfortable around doing little experiments, and that it doesn't mean anything about them if it doesn't go perfectly.
Yeah, good, very good point. Thank you for that. Barbara, what about you? What do you like? What are some shifts in thinking that you see or that you promote with the accelerator?
Well, I mean, you know, startups succeed and fail all the time. So, you know, failure means nothing. I like how Nadya said, we attach a meaning to that. And then society, you know, attaches a meaning to that sometimes. But it doesn't have to have any meaning. It just can be the evolution of what you need to learn or understand or, you know, augment for yourself. Mm-hmm. You know, maybe you need some extra collaborators. So failure is kind of your greatest growth tool, because if you never fail, what do you ever learn?
Yeah.
Like even in school, like, you know, you had to learn 1 + 1, that's 2. You had, you know, like we're always learning and evolving. If you rode a bike or when we were driving a car, like, you know, no one's been in an accident ever. I mean, you know, we all learn, things happen, and we evolve. And if you're not evolving while you're learning, then, you know, are you really growing as a human being?
There we go, back to the
That's,
whole
you know,
person thing again.
Failure trains you for that. I mean, you know, and we have failures in all many different ways. Sometimes you get disappointments. Sometimes you just have failures. Sometimes things don't work out. Sometimes, like you said, relationships don't quite gel the way they should. But it doesn't mean any lesser of you. It just is like, what did I learn from this today? That's the way I look at failure.
Thank you. No, that's I love that point. Deb, let's jump back to you for a minute. You and I have talked quite a bit about the different qualities that leaders need to embody and model moving forward as we evolve, as we change in this landscape right now. So things like empathy, integrity. How do you help the executives that you work with to start moving in that direction with those particular qualities?
Well, I help them identify their habit of thinking. In the neuroscience world that I love, the term's metacognition, and it's just a fancy way to say this is how you think about thinking. And you can't help them determine that until you can give them some concrete examples, which come out of meaningful conversation. So we always have to have the people first, have the connection with people. So we always need to be thinking intrinsically. Even though we're in extrinsic environments, sometimes emotion can get ahead of logic, and emotion can easily have things implode, which we don't want to do. So we often just take a step back. I'm also a yoga teacher, so I'm a big proponent of a breath practice. I believe there's a lot of solace in taking a few deep breaths and sometimes just pausing and having some silence to reflect on behavior and realize, especially now that we're working from home, sometimes our personal life can creep into our workday. And it's harder now, like we've all alluded on the call today. We have interruptions because we are at home, which is our personal space. So just giving themselves an opportunity to breathe, giving them time to reflect. And sometimes you just need that outside conversation with a colleague or a coach to really just have the ability to vent. And again, the continuity of the theme today, be heart-centered, be vulnerable, be authentic, and be okay with not being okay. There's my Irish Nana, there you go, Sharon, this is for you. She taught me at a very young age that failing stands for my first attempt in learning. And she used to say, you're going to be the queen of getting back up. And I use that same analogy to today. I tell them my Irish Nana taught me that as a young girl. And it's okay for leaders to fail. And that persona of getting to the top and hitting that proverbial ceiling, if you will, it's gone the wayside, because success doesn't mean that you have to be fatigued and exhausted and burnt out. It's okay now to say that you're not okay, because we're asking the right questions, we're modeling the right behavior, and just having that openness instead of being a leader who's doing and doing and doing all the time and thinking they have to stay in that level of activity, just getting them to stop and realize that we're human beings for a reason.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. Great summary there. I'm just taking a quick check on time. We've got a few minutes left. Is there anything that we haven't covered here that any one of you would like to throw into the mix with the conversation at large?
I would like to add something that just keeps coming up, bubbling up to the surface, especially Deb, with what you just said. The finding out what people's why is, and reminding them of that why as they go through the sometimes the chaos of our daily lives at the moment. It's very easy to forget why you are doing it. I forget why I'm doing it sometimes. And when I forget why I'm doing it, I revert back to some kind of judgment about myself and where I'm lacking and where, I'm right about not being good enough here. I'm not the right one. Versus when I'm able to hold on to what why is, my purpose, the thing that really pulls me out of that nonsense that goes on in here. And the same thing for the people that I work with. And with the students that are in Code Talk, here's how it works. Their why keeps getting put up in front of them. And they keep being reminded of that, so that in those really difficult moments when the challenge is too much and they believe that they don't have it, we go, yeah, but look at your why. And then they say, oh, okay, and you're telling me I can do this. Oh, okay, all right, well, I'll give it another shot. So that's just,
oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, everybody has a goal or a why or something. And I know that I do better in my day when I'm connected to mine.
Yeah, absolutely. And just made me realize too, Sharon, I would love for you to briefly mention a little bit more about Code Talk, because this is so relevant with Code Talk specifically in terms of the whole person, bringing the whole person to the table, understanding the personal side with people, and what you're doing specifically with women and Code Talk.
It's kind of amazing what happens when you put somebody who has been struggling with the consequences of economic hardship or circumstantial hardship, when you put somebody in a safe space and you begin to teach them a new way of looking at problems and at themselves, and you begin to break apart where people have identified with what's happened to them, and you just give them a chance to see things a little bit differently, along with some tools and along with the kind of encouragement like that Nadya always provides to me, is that she kind of reminds me about the better parts of myself. She kind of helps light those things up so that they're the things that get the air. I do think that what happens in Code Talk is that the talent or the capability that people have that have been obscured through no fault of their own is given some air. Yeah. And we teach these skills, and we teach professional development, and we say, okay, when your boss yells at you, this is how to appropriately and constructively respond. And at the end of the day, somebody begins to see themselves as capable of being a front-end web developer and capable of making something that's valuable. And that changes everything, because fundamentally it changes how you think about yourself. Yeah. And the biases that we all hold about ourselves, I think, are our greatest, most formidable barriers in life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Very well said. Very well said. So we have about a minute left for each of you. So Nadya, you're up next. What are your parting thoughts here? How would you like to wrap this up?
Sure. Well, I just want to say that there's an opportunity to hear from Sharon next week, as well as the other Women in Tech Hollywood charities. We have 5 charities that we support in Los Angeles. So one of them is Code Talk, and we've got STEM Advantage, Pep Up Tech, DIY Girls, and Steam Coders, all in the Los Angeles area, and all focused on either girls or women and people of color or in the underserved communities. And so that's our focus. And so you'll hear from Sharon on Wednesday, as well as those other people from the charities at our Women in Tech Hollywood event, which is from 10 until 1:30. But the program that I'll be introducing Sharon and the other charities during that program. So that is free. I posted it on LinkedIn, and there's a free promo code. But if you also go to Women in Tech Hollywood, so withollywood.org, you can also find that there, information about the program, and hear more from Sharon and the other Women in Tech Hollywood charities, which we are so inspired by, and which are making a really big difference in our communities, and essentially working on the pipeline and getting more diverse people into technology, which is what we all want.
Love it. And we'll make sure that we all share those links for you too. Okay. Deb, what are your parting thoughts?
My parting thoughts are, it was just an honor to be with all of you. And I always believe we gain so much from these meaningful conversations. And my one takeaway that I would love to know that all of you ladies will do is keep self-awareness in your forefront And always remember to keep self-care in your toolkit and look after you first.
Thank you. Barbara, how about you?
So, you know, I agree with Deb on that self-care. It's very important that in order for us to serve others, we have to kind of take care of ourselves. So that's why I'm kind of getting back into my normal routines and kind of making sure that I have my own level sets. So that's very important. That's one good takeaway. And then I'm with the Women's Innovation Fund Accelerator. So we do gender balance C-level emerging tech companies. Equal amount of men and women. Our website's WIFAX, WIFAXVC, all one word.com/academy. If you want to go look at our accelerator there, if you want to know more information about that, that's me.
Excellent, thank you. And Deb, you have a podcast that you need to give a shout out to.
I do, and it's called Imperfect, because we're all imperfect. The Heart-Centered Leadership Podcast. So just a lovely alignment to what Jude's doing in the heart-centered tech space. So embrace all your imperfections, ladies, and everything's on my website at debcrowe.com.
Great. And Sharon, if we know any women that would be a good fit for Code Talk, how do we get involved? How do we get them involved?
There's will contact me. There's the same. You have an in. There's the St. Joseph Center website. It's stjosephcenter.org. And if somebody wants to apply, they just fill out the online application, and we begin we run an interview process once a quarter. It really is for anybody who is stuck in a place that they don't belong in and that really are motivated to want to change their own lives.
Yeah, and if there's any companies that want to hire Code Talk graduates, definitely contact Sharon too, because it's one of those things to solve multiple problems. You actually can do a problem change. So people are looking forward to hire more diverse people in tech, especially at the entry level. Go and contact Sharon, because she's got excellent. We've hired, I think, probably 7 Code Talk graduates at Sony Pictures, and they are all great. And so have nothing but amazing things to hear for the program. So please, if you're a company that wants to hire, contact Sharon for some great entry-level tech people.
Yay. So I think we're at time here. I'm not sure where Jude's at, but I think my final point is going to be, well, number one, I feel way more connected to all of you now. We've had some great conversations separate from this and here as well. I hope everyone's gotten something out of this today. And I love quotes, so I'm just going to wrap up too with a quote from Maya Angelou that I love so much, which is, "We are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike." And I think that's something we can all take to heart and into heart-centered tech today, because we really are more alike than we are unalike. Right. And that's a big connection point. So that is my hope going out into the future, this unknown world that we're all stepping into. So thank you so much to
everyone
today, to Sharon, to Barbara, to Nadya, to Deb, and thank you, Jude, for holding this wonderful virtual conference with us.
Thank you, all of you, for being wonderful heart-centered tech leaders. Not only that, I feel when I was listening to this very meaningful conversation that you were having, that I'm not just looking at 5 women. I'm looking at hundreds and hundreds of women that you are all touching from your heart, not just feel good, but a career and next steps and a helping hand without it being a charity. You know, teaching how to fish and really doing meaningful work. The vision for Heart-Centered Tech was these people, they've all been individually certified, but now they're able to get together. And that's the whole point of the summit, is to put everybody together. It will keep growing. Thank you, all of you, for being here. Sharon, you have a nomination coming up, so we're all going to be on the lookout for that to see who's going to be added to the membership of Heart-Centered Tech to continue these amazing, great leaders. Thank you so much for tuning into Heart-Centered Tech today, and we look forward to doing more of these summits in the future. and bless all of you. Thank you from my heart. Jude, to you, thank you. And have a blessed day. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, everyone.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.